So today I'll be talking about wireframing and creating user flows as a product manager. So before I do that, I'll share my screen so I can take everyone along. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Yes. So wireframing. I think maybe some of us here might think, okay, why wireframing and why user flows for a product manager? I think this is supposed to be for a product designer, you might ask. But actually, wireframing and user flows are actually two important design concepts that we as product managers are supposed to be interested in, because it heavily affects how our users that we're building products for interact or experience our products, which at the end of the day is what the product is all about. So it's actually very important that as a product manager, we have like the understanding of wireframing and creating user flows. So like case in point, let's say you go to an apartment that for you to get to the living room, let's say when you get to the apartment, the first place you get to is you see the bathroom. Well, the moment you open the door, then for you to get to the kitchen, you have to go through the bathroom to the kitchen and from the kitchen to the bedroom. You might ask, what's happening right here? Like, what's the flow? So that's like the important question you ask yourself, what's the flow? So as product managers, you have to like ask yourself these questions, what's the flow? Because as an individual looking for an apartment, let's say, because I've actually been searching for an apartment, I've been house hunting, and I've seen wonders in the city of Lagos, and I've seen different kind of building structures and stuff. You might ask yourself, was it that the architecture or the architect or the landlord was not thinking about the person I'm going to live here? So it's the same question you as a product manager, you're supposed to ask yourself, because you don't want your users thinking about that same thing. Is it that the product managers or the CEO are not thinking about how I'm going to interact or use the product? So you should always ask yourself, what's the flow? Before you embark on building any product, what's the flow? Because understanding the flow is to see from the eyes of the user how the users will interact with your product. And this brings us to user flows. So you might ask, what are user flows? So just a brief introduction on user flows. User flows are actually visual representation that gives you at a glance or shows you at a glance how your user will move through your...
Sorry, Bridget, are you moving from screen to screen? Because we're still seeing the main screen, or is it just me?
Wow, I'm actually moving from screen to screen.
Yeah, the screen is not changing.
Let me
stop the screen has been, still.
It's still on the main one. Sorry.
All right, let me share again.
Yeah, but put it on presentation mode before you share, so that maybe the settings, the privacy settings of your computer.
Okay. So can you see the screen? Still moving?
Yeah, perfect. Love it.
Wonderful. So I was talking about what's the flow, basically, and that's a question that product managers, we should ask ourselves when we want to build a product for a user. We should not just jump right into, okay, the technology to use, what the screen should look like, but we should actually ask ourselves, what's the flow? How do we want our user's experience to be like? So this is a question we should ask ourselves, so you won't be like that tenant that is living in a house that you have to go through the kitchen before you can get to the bathroom. So talking about user flows, what are user flows? User flows are visual representation that shows at a glance how your user will move through your app or your product to actually achieve a meaningful goal. So the users here are like the star of your flow. So you need to put that in the back of your mind. You need to be user focused when approaching or when you're about to build a product. So users are supposed to be the star of your product, not you, the product manager, even though we feel like we're everything, but we have to remove the glasses of a product manager and at this point put on the glasses of our users to see or experience firsthand how our users will go through the different phases or different pages of our product. So user flow diagrams usually take the form of a chart, and it comprises of some shapes that often have universal meanings. So for every user flow that you might see, you always see like a circle which serves as an entry point. Like you have here, you can see a circle that depicts the start and the end. So it helps you as the product manager or who you're communicating that flow with, be it the designer, the developer, or your stakeholders, what the flow is about. It helps you to understand, okay, where we are starting from and where the flow ends. So rectangles and squares are usually used to depict processes or actionable steps that your users are going to like take through in the user flow. Then diamonds are used for decision. So let's say that a particular step have like multiple pathways. So we might have like multiple screens that the users might see. So you usually use a diamond to depict decision, to say, okay, like we have here, you can see like, okay, there's a yes or a no. If it's a yes, it enters into this process box. If it's a no, it enters into this process box. So it just helps you to show at a glance the different stages that your users will pass through when interacting with your product. So that are what user flows are used for. So this brings us now to wireframes. I know you might ask, what does wireframe have to do with user flow? The thing is, wireframes and user flow are two very important design tools because they both show like at the beginning, like the different stages of your product. So they both have like a lot in common because it shows different level of resolution or fidelity of your finished product or of how your product will look. So a good wireframe or user flow when used at the correct time will increase the speed of iteration and also help improve communication across your product team when used at the correct time. So what are wireframes? Wireframes are usually actually schematics or blueprints that helps communicate the structure or components of your product that you're building. So it shows at a glance like the different components, like the different positioning on your product, or like different screens. Let's say for an application, a web application you're building, or a mobile application, which each component will sit on the screen. So it helps you to visualize to say, okay, should my users be seeing this kind of information at the particular point in time when seeing this, when on this particular page or on this particular screen? So it helps you to iterate faster and also brainstorm with your team to say, okay, this is the perfect place to put this button. Should we put a logout button at this particular point of the screen? Should we not put it? Should we put a profile icon here? So it's just basically like components. So you don't need to have fancy designs or crazy icons from flat icons. We know where we get our icons from. We don't need to have those fancy designs here. We just need like boxes or boxes and cards to like indicate what we go where and which component we sit. So wireframes are commonly used to lay out content and functionality to an extent in your solution by showing the path between the pages, which takes into account your user's journey. So wireframes, yes, like I said, is important, and it helps product teams to communicate ideas better, to also reiterate if there's any point or at any phase in time that you need to correct a particular button. Maybe as a team, you guys don't agree that, okay, this should be there, or this should not be placed at this particular position of your screen. Now, this brings us to Wireflow. Now that we have an understanding of what user flows and wireframes are, we can now look at what happens when these two design tools are combined to create a wireflow. So wireflow, like the name implies, is a combination of user flows and wireframe. So wireflows is a fusion of flowcharts, like I showed in our previous slide, the process box, the decision box, the circles that indicates entry points. So it's a fusion of that and wireframes. That is the components of your screen, of what the users will be seeing, different components, different layouts, because both of them fusing together gives a greater context as to how your product will function, what it will look like, and how your users will move within it. So when creating a wireflow, what you do here is you replace the rectangles, like I explained, the rectangles, which implies processes or steps. You replace it with the different screens in your user flow with the wireframe sketch. Then you include a text of how your users will interact with them. So this is what the Wireflow is actually about. And it's also important that when working on a user flow or a Wireflow, be it, you should always have on the back of your mind, or you should always have a name for that flow, because the name is what describes the purpose of that flow. It helps you to stay user focused, to know, okay, what it is that my user is trying to achieve, to help you to stay focused on the goal that you want the user to achieve. So it is important that you give a name to the Wireflow, the user flow that you're creating. And right here, I did a little sketch to show you guys what I mean. So you can see that the flow name is view save photo. So we know the goal that we want our users to achieve, which is for our users to view photos that be saved in their gallery. So I was able to like quickly drop like 3 screens, and the flow, I think I forgot to make mention of the navigation. So it actually helps you to show, okay, movement from one process to another. So this is what we have here. So as you can see here, this is the home screen. So this is just a wireframe of the home screen. So you can see that there's not much information or pictures or colors, just boxes, components, or layouts of how the screen or how the finished product will look like. So this is the home screen, and we have a step that we want our user to perform to get to the final goal. Remember, the final goal is to view saved photo. So we're saying that it taps on photos here on the home screen. And once it taps on photos, you can see that photos is highlighted on this wireframe design here. And the moment it taps on photos, you view all photos on the gallery page, gallery screen. So this is the place where photos will be displayed. So it just gives you first-hand information of how, okay, this is what my users will do, this is what they will see, and how they will move through the application. So basically, that is what Wireflow help us as product managers to do. And it's also important that when doing Wireflows, that the flow should go in a single, like in one direction. So when you're doing Wireflow, like I may mention, you should always have your users in the back of your mind. They should be the star of your flow. It's not how you will do it, but basically, okay, how your users will go through the app, what they will see and what they will not see. So that is what Wireflow is about. Now that we have an understanding of Wireflow, so I'll speak on steps to creating a complete user flow design. You might ask yourself, what is a complete user flow design? So there's user flow and there's user flow. Yeah. So I'll be talking about the user flow, the complete user flow design. So like I make mention of what I mean by user flow design here. I said this is the flow that shows like pages, the logic, the actions, like what you expect, what the user is supposed to do at different screens or different intervals. Like, okay, user is supposed to go to the home screen. User clicks on photo, the gallery page comes up. So that is like the complete user flow design. So it shows the steps, shows wire flows, shows what the user is supposed to do and what happens when the user performs certain actions. So that is what I mean by the complete user flow design. So before you can get the complete user flow design, using what we have learned in the previous slide, like I've mentioned, you should have a user goal. So you need to be user focused. So the user goal describes what your users want to achieve with your product. So what is the goal? Like I mentioned in the previous slide, the goal is for users to view saved photo. That is the goal. I can take, case in point, I can take an example of Twitter. I'm sure most of us here are familiar with the app Twitter. And we know Twitter have like different background view or background color. You can go dark mode, you can go white background mode and stuff like that. So let's say you want to change the background view of your Twitter app. So the goal of that will be, okay, your user should be able to change the background view. So what you can give the name based on, the name of your flow should in a way be like a replica of what the goal is about. So let's say the name of the flow will be update background view. So for you to update background view, a complete user flow design might not go like the steps This brings us to the task flow. So this describes the steps of what the users are required to do to achieve this goal. So if I want to update the background view of my Twitter account, what am I supposed to do? What are the steps I'm supposed to like take for me to do that? So first I have to launch the Twitter app. Yes, I have to click on the Twitter icon on my home screen of my device. I click on it, what do I see? I see, okay, the timeline view. So that is like the default view the moment you click to launch your Twitter application. So I see that, what do I do next? Or what is my user supposed to do? So the user is supposed to click on the profile picture on the top left-hand corner of your screen. So you click on that, what do you see? You see a list of menu items or many options. So what do you click next? You click settings. When you click settings, you see users click settings, and the moment after user click settings, you might see the display different options of setting options. So you might see, okay, display and sound. So user clicks on display and sound. What does users see? So users see the different background options available for the user. So user selects their most preferred option. And the moment user selects their most preferred option, what happens? Automatically, the screen changes to that selected view. Let's say I was having like the dark mode, I selected it, and now it became the bright mode. So that shows like the complete user flow of what my user is supposed to do. Mind you, your user flow should always be direct, like it should represent a complete task. It should not be segmented or fragmented. Don't start a user flow that just gets to like the half stage of what your user is supposed to do. Like I'll stop at, like for this updating the background view of my Twitter account, I'll say, okay, user opens the app, gets to the profile picture, clicks that, clicks on settings, and that's where the flow ends. We should not do that. You should always be fragmented. You should always represent a complete task. And also, it should not be too long. If it's too long, it loses its power to tell the story of your users and how they will go about it because it's too long. So you should always make sure to say, okay, to make sure that your flow is not always too long because you kind of lose your users. Because first thing, time to value is always important. So if your users is taking too much time, like completing a particular task, you have to check that flow and see how you can break your flow into bits and different parts. So having the complete user flow design helps you to see, okay, to know, like at a glance, if this flow is already too long or too lengthy, even before you start writing codes that bring your flow or your design to life, even before you start writing code that brings the wireframe or your prototype to life. So just from having that user flow in mind, you can already see that, okay, this is becoming too long. Where can I break it? What can I do to help my user achieve that goal faster? Reducing time to value so that your user can quickly get or achieve the goal they are trying to achieve. Yeah, so that is one important thing that you should do. Remember, your users are the star of your flow. I have to keep saying this because some people always feel, okay, I have to think about my designers. What can my designers design or what can my developers code? Yes, we always try to like put in mind, okay, what our developers can do. We don't want to over stress them with work or to do the impossible. So you might want to like bend your way to say, okay, my developer can't do this, they can't do that. Not forgetting that we're talking about the users, because if your users are not happy, then it turns to terrible user experience. And terrible user experience means nobody is opening your products. Your products will just be there. Yes, it will have wonderful downloads on Play Store, but if you check daily active users, you see that your downloads on Play Store is 1 million plus download, but daily active users is just about 100 because of terrible user experience. So always remember, your users are the star of your flow. So now that we have an understanding of how to complete your user flow design, I'll take us to how do you use user flow in the product design phase. Like I mentioned, yes, wireframing or user flow is more or less things that you do in the product design phase when you're building a product. So I've listed out some things that I usually do that have worked for me when worked for me in terms of how I've like implemented user flows in my product design phase. So I will just like mention some of them. Remember, user flows are a great way for you to collaborate with your team. So it's a great way for you to collaborate with the product designers, with the developers, with the stakeholders. It's a wonderful way. And there's this saying that it's easier to correct a design than to correct what has already been written in code. I will tell you here that it's easier to correct a user flow than to correct a design. It is better that, yes, you agree on a particular flow. Okay, this is how we want our users to interact with our product. This is what we think they should see, just by having stacks of card or components or boxes on the screen, than actually having your designers to put in so much effort bringing the design or the wireframe to life. So it is actually easier for you to reiterate with your user flow than for you to iterate with your design. So this brings us here again to how do you use your user flow? How to use user flows in the product design phase? So like what I normally do, like the first thing to do is for you to research your possible users of the product. Remember, the users are the star of the flow. Research on them, have an understanding of the problem you are trying to solve and how your ideal solution will solve that problem. You have to have an understanding, okay, who are my type of users? Are they really tech savvy? Are they not tech savvy? Are they kids? Are they in their mid-40s? You need to understand this. You need to understand like user personnel. User personnel, I think, is something that we'll discuss in the community maybe in the future. But user personnel basically just tells you like, gives you like a brief description of your target audience or your target users, what they are like, what are the pay points, what are their needs. That is what the user personnel basically shows you. So you have to have this understanding, research on them, okay, to know, okay, if I'm building my solution, how should I go about it? The flow, how would the flow look like? So you need to research your possible users before you get going with drawing or constructing a user flow. So you need to know who you're building the solution for. So research on them. So I normally do that. I research, okay, who are my users? Have an understanding of them. Are they tech savvy? Are they not tech savvy? So you don't want to build something that is too complex for them to understand. Like I always say, don't build something that will make your users feel not smart. That means you have already failed already. The product has already failed, because if your users are feeling like they can't use your product, they won't use it actually, because they'll tell you, there's always something easier, because the goal is to build something that is easy for your users to use. So you need to research on your possible users. I can't talk much on that too much, but you actually need to have an understanding of who your users are, who you're building for, and how your solution will solve that problem. Then there's another thing I do, because, okay, yes, I have an understanding of who my users are. I might not know, okay, how to go about starting the flow of how my product will solve that. Maybe I have an idea, okay, I know how my product will solve it, but I don't really know how I will like take my users through using my products. Something I normally do when I'm stuck, I research on competitors. What are they doing? Like people that are already solving that problem. I research on them, let's say, which app now will I use? Okay, like for RiseVest. So RiseVest is an investment app, so you can invest and stuff like that. So RiseVest, let's say that competitors in the market are like Bamboo, Chaka. So these are like people that are already playing in the same field. So more or less the kind of things that they will be like, the value proposition that they're proposing to their users are more or less the same thing. So if you are like RiseVest, for instance, you want to like, okay, let me see what Chaka is doing. How are they going about it? So something I do, and I think most of all product managers, we do that. When we're looking at a product, we always try to like, this could be better. I would have done this way. Yes, and keep that. You can actually do that with your own product. So keep those information in your head that, okay, this can be better. I would have done this way, because we don't want to replicate what our competitors are doing out there. Me saying that you research on your competitors is just to help you get going, to get the juice flowing of saying, okay, this could be better. I can do more better than this. I think this process can be broken down. Like I remember, like I did mention, the process to achieving a goal should not be too cumbersome, to probably like too many processes. It's either that it's better you break it instead of the process being too long. So researching on your competitors, get that juice flowing to say, okay, I think I can approach this problem this way. I think the reason why, okay, these my users are still having these issues, okay, looking at competitors like kind of help. Then remember, you are a product manager. Like in the product team, you have like developers, you have designers, you have subject matter experts. So to me, like I always say, there's no I in team. So I always enjoy brainstorming with my team. So thirdly, I would say you brainstorm with your team on how to improve these findings in your solution. Yes, you have this wonderful idea, but talk to subject matter expert about this. It might be that you're a subject matter expert, but it's never bad to hear one or two opinions about that matter. There might be that there are better approaches also to solve that problem. So why not share with the team? And remember, you're not the one that will actually design these wonderful ideas that you have in your head, and you will be the one to code these wonderful ideas you have in your head. So it's always better to brainstorm with your team. How can we approach this? How can we solve this? How can we go about this? Then lastly, when you have all these findings, you have brainstorm with your team. I normally, when I'm done like with the brainstorming session, I normally do like, then I can work on the user flow based on our agreement from the brainstorming meetings. So you do a step-by-step user flow of how your users will interact with your solution. Remember, adding a unique experience to it, because we don't want to come and do Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V with your product after looking at or researching how your competitors are already solving that problem. So remember, add a unique user experience. What is your USP? What is your unique selling point? What makes you different from the other people that are already doing it, or the other companies that are already in that space? What makes you different? So you have to add that touch to your user flow. So this is how I would say that this is what I do that you can do that might work, that can also work for you. So this is how I use user flows in a product design phase. So when I've done that, then I can share with the product design team as, okay, let's bring this user flow, let's bring this to life based on my research and documenting or creating the user flow. So before we go, here are some of the tools I use when creating user flows. So these are the tools that I've used, although there are others that are not listed here. So it may not be, for the tools not being mentioned, it doesn't mean that they are terrible tools. It's just the tools that I've used or worked with that I'm kind of like comfortable with. You can also always research or ask questions in the group, in the community, or learning resource channel. Now, people in products, yes. I'll market people in products, yes. Channels about, okay, what tools can I use to create user flows? So some of the tools I've used Miro, I've used FigJam. So FigJam is actually like, it's part of Figma. So I use FigJam. I recently started using FigJam and I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I think the first tool I really started with when I started creating user flow for the very first time in my product manager career was Visio. So Visio actually helps you to like represent, okay, your user flows, structured manner and stuff like that. So I've used Microsoft Visio, also PowerPoint. You can use PowerPoint to represent your user flow like you saw in my previous slide. It was PowerPoint I used to represent it. There's also Balsamiq, you can use that. And there are others listed. You can always research, ask in the community about tools that other people have used, they can recommend. There's Whimsical. There are other tools that you can use to create your own user flow so you can reiterate with your product team. So lastly, before we go, what are the key takeaways from what I've just shared? So I just highlighted some key takeaways that we can like store in the back of our head from this session, okay? Now the first thing, like I made mention, that is very important, remember, understand the problem. You need to understand the problem. Yes, you have a solution. You have something in mind that you think, have an idea of what will solve a problem. If you don't understand it fully, you might solve that problem wrong. So it's important that you understand the problem you're trying to solve for your users before you start creating a flow. Then brainstorm. Like remember, there's no I in team. There's no I can do it all by myself. Brainstorm with your team to come up with the easiest way the user can complete a task using your product. Brainstorm, have meetings. Yeah, of course, I've already said that product managers will love meetings too much before. So let's own the name. Brainstorm with your team. Come up with the easiest way. Keyword, easiest way for that your user can complete a task using your product. Then map out a flow that gives you a view into the part of user experience success. Remember, great user experience connotes great product success, and great product success connotes great ROI, return on investment. And if you have wonderful return on investment, you cannot have that conversation you want to have with your line managers, your team lead about a pay raise. So you can't have that if your users are not happy. Your DAU is dropping every day. So have a clear user flow that helps you to understand, okay, the user experience of your user. Then I can't sound this enough. When creating a user flow, always make sure your users are the star of your flow. Yes, we want to make it easy for our developers, we want to make it easy for our designers, we want to make it easy for yourself, because if it's even too complex, you see yourself writing too many product documentations here, left, right, and center. But it will all be worth it if you actually build a product that the user experience is like, wow, like out of this place. So always make sure your users are the star of the flow. And lastly, before building a product or a solution, always ask yourself this question: what's the flow? What's the flow? And on this note, I end here.
Thank you very much, Bridget. This is awesome. I think we're going to have a question and answer session. And there are some questions that have been dropped in the activity box already. So we can check those out. There's a question from Derek. There's also a question from Jerome. Derek's question is quite a mouthful. I don't know if you can see the questions from your end. Bridget?
I'll have to, okay.
You can check the activity box. So let me just read out Derek's question to everybody in case you can't see. Considering the fact that creating user flows and wireframes is the work of the user experience designer in Sena environments, and also considering management of timeline and delivering these documentation to your team for i5 prototypes to be created. Wireflows needed to be done by PMs. Case in point needed. Wireflows needed to be done by PMs, considering that in Sena environments, user experience designers have this major responsibility. Yeah, that's Derek's question. Do you want to answer that, or I should read Jerome's question as well?
Please read them. Derek's question you're reading, right?
Yeah. Derek's question is, wireflows needed to be done by PMs, considering that in Sena environments, user experience designers are the ones that do it, and also understanding that PMs still have to manage so many other things. Should PMs really still be, should we hold it as a high key, like a very important responsibility, basically? I think Derek can also unmute his mic to say that verbally if I miss.
Yeah, please, Derek, can you ask a question?
Yeah, I think that's better.
All right. Hi, guys. Thank you so much, Bridget. It was pretty insightful. So user flows, wire flows. I've actually seen wire flows being used before, but my question is, usually in Sena climates, right? The UX designer, someone who is focusing on the user experience part of the work, needs to do the research, come back, based on the research, suggests exactly what should be built in terms of how the user journey will be like, right? Because that's actually their own documents to create, things like the user journey map, the user personas. They're actually the ones that are in Sena climates meant to create them. And then again, but then we know that for like Princess pointed out, for fast-paced startups, you find out that the PM does most of this work. Now, user flows are pretty important, right? User flows are simply drawing the lines from point A to point B through different shapes, from the diamond shape to the square shape to the oval shape. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But wire flows are more like, it's more like joining both wireframes and user flows together. Now, it looks all beautiful on paper, right? But when you're giving a task to deliver, you're told to handle, to do some documentation and then share with your team, you can't spend 5 days working on only just wire flows, when you can simply deliver the user flows that would enable the UI designer go and actually start working on something. Most likely, the product designer is actually meant to even work on the basic low fidelity wireframes, which then gets translated to the high fidelity prototypes, right? Which then gets given to the engineering team to actually start working on. Would you still recommend that PM should work on wireflows in those scenarios?
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for your question. I think I was having this conversation with someone from the community. So it's actually good that you said the word saner environment. Yeah, so in companies where we have user UX designers that work on this, that their actual work is actually ensuring great user experience, doing empathy map, this, that, yada, yada, yada. So we have those guys working on that, but in some fast-paced environments, in most companies, like, okay, let's take Nigeria case in point, where we are all like, yeah, most companies in Nigeria don't really have those roles in the company. So are we going to say because we don't have these roles, are we going to say, okay, it's not my job, it's not my duties, I don't need to get my hands on it, I'll leave that pending? Then once we just get, okay, we receive an idea or a commandment from the CEO, this is what we want to build, we just say, okay, developers build this. I think it is important because as a product manager, you have to ensure the success of a product. Remember, when a product is successful, it's a work done well by the team, but when the product fails, they hold the product manager accountable. So I'm not saying, okay, you should now replace your job to say, okay, because we have to do this, means, okay, you have to change your job title, you're a product manager and stuff like that, to like a US designer. I'm saying that you should just have this basic understanding. Remember, you're also communicating with cross-functional teams. So let's say we have UX designers in a team. Of course, that company should also be able to afford a PM. And remember, your job as a PM is to liaise with like the different members of the team. So it is important for you to have an understanding or basic understanding of what each member of the team are doing. So for you to communicate to the user designer, UX designer, if you don't have an understanding of what a wireframe is, it might be difficult. So it's the same thing when you're communicating with developers, them using words or jargons like APIs, PROs, and the likes. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to code, but it's just for you to have this basic understanding. And me, for one, like the wireframe, like you made mention, yes, there's low fidelity, there's high fidelity. Like me, I hardly even go on those tools I mentioned to start sketching one wonderful thing. Of course, maybe I have like a designer part of my team, they should be able to do that. But in case they are not like seeing the bigger picture, I can quickly like one tool I failed to mention in the list of tools is pencil and paper. I always have like my pencil, just draw something rough, just for them to get the idea. Then they can now work on getting that wireframe looking all nice, like putting the components so that we can share it with other members of the team. I think there's a tool that after you have sketched on paper, you can translate that your sketch to like a digital format. I can't remember the name of that tool. If anyone can know what I'm talking about, they can drop it on the comment section. There's a tool after sketching on a piece of paper, you can take a picture, kind of like translate it to like a digital wireframe. I think it's Balsamic, I'm not really sure again, but there's actually a tool. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is we shouldn't drop it to say, okay, because these skills are necessarily for product designers or UX designers, like I made mention in the beginning of the presentation, that yes, these are skills or tools for designers, but they are still one of like the important tools or skills that we as product managers need to have, because these have to do with how your users interact with your product or the experience. So it is important, I feel it is important as a product manager, you should get yourself involved with it. Not necessarily you doing all the heavy lifting, but just have the basic understanding. Derek.
Thank you very much, Bridget.
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah, I think this question that we have here is from Jerome. What is the difference between wireframes and sketch? I think you answered that, but you can touch on that.
Yeah, so wireframes, sketch is actually the same thing. So sketch, like I said, a sketch is actually like a representation of the wireframe, basically. So it's just like a visual representation of what your product is supposed to look like. So having a sketch that shows the components of or placeholders or text of how the different components or layouts are going to interact on your product is actually the wireframe. So there's actually pretty much no difference.
Thank you very much. There's also a question from Kevin. How do you know when a user flow is too long? You mentioned that it should not be too long. So like, how do you know when it's becoming too long?
Okay, like I mentioned, your user flow should represent a complete task. So remember, there's something that we do as product managers when assigning tasks to our developers. There's what we have, like the tasks, then we have like sub-tasks underneath it. So when, for you to have like a task, you may say, this task is too long, like, okay, let's say case in point, the task that you're giving your developer, I'm using this as an example, the task you're giving your developer is, my users should be able to log in on our platform to access it, or let's say my users should be able to register on our platform to like access the platform. So that a task has like subtasks. Like for example, first we need like login page or registration page for this to be done. You need registration page. You need like APIs or whatnot, or something that you need to send like redirection link to the users to their email. Users should be able to verify accounts via that email and stuff. So this itself are like subtasks that in turn like build up to this main task. So if you say, okay, you want to do this, for starting it, for example, users being able to like log in is like a flow on its own. So if you say you want to add all those flows together, okay, from login, user will log in, user will register by filling a form, user will click submit, user will get a prompt or a notification that shows user have signed up, user will click on the verification. Already it's becoming too long. So you can like break it into the different subtasks. So your user flow can be like a representation of the subtasks that you want to like give your developer or your designer to work on. It can be a representation of your subtasks. The user flow might show, okay, the registration point. The user flow might show again the verification point. So this is how you break it down instead of just joining everything together. Yes, the main goal is for them to be able to like get access into the system, but already having that flow is already becoming too long. So it's either you just break it into to represent like a single task, like what we do with breaking a task to a subtask. Kevin.
Okay, so is it like a user story?
Sorry?
Is it like the user flow of only a specific user story, like that?
So user story is basically, okay, representing your tasks based on the representation of how your users will like engage or achieve or complete that particular task. That's what user stories is all about. So user flow, yes, you can use user flow to represent a user story. Yes, that can be in bits. If you think that can help you to like explain, it can actually help when you are like assigning tasks to your developer. It can still be easy for you to show like a user flow of how you expect the users to complete that particular task or that particular user story, so that your developers can have in mind what they are supposed to do at different points without missing anything important. Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Before Stephanie goes ahead, let me just read the last question. User flow, task flow, user journey. What's the difference between these three? User flow, task flow, user journey. Is there a difference, and what are they? Thanks.
Yeah, so there's a difference. There's always like this question about what's the difference between what's the difference between user flow and user journey. Anyway, before I go into that difference between the user flow and user journey, for task flow, like I explained in this slide, the task flow just shows like the different steps that your user is supposed to like take or do to achieve a particular goal. It just shows the steps. It might not necessarily show what they will see or what your application or your system will do in return. It just shows, okay, this is what the users need to do step by step. So let's say user goes to the home page, user clicks the Twitter application, user clicks this. So it does not really show, okay, user goes to the home page, user clicks the Twitter application, then it shows a splash screen of the Twitter app. It does not go into like the nitty gritty of what your user is trying to do. It just shows, okay, the different steps of what your users will do to achieve a particular goal. So user flow kind of like all encompassing, shows the different steps, shows what the user will see, shows what the system itself or your application will return. Like I explained with the updating of background. So let's say I've successfully clicked to change my dark mode to bright mode. Automatically, the application should update or automatically change the display mode. So that is what my user expects to see. So user flow should show all that so that your developer will have in the back of their head that, okay, if the users perform these various actions, this is what they should see. So this is basically what this is basically like the difference between user flow and task flow. So the difference between user flow and user journey. So user journey actually brings to life like the experience, how your application, how they interact with your application, how it makes them feel, how your application makes them feel. So that's what user journey actually does. So that's like the difference. So you need to like explain, okay, if your user click this, is your user happy? Is your user not happy? Like different points. Okay, these are the experience. This is on this particular screen, your user is like well informed concerning your product. At this particular point, this is how you want your users to feel. Just like controlling the emotions of your user. So user journey is not something that is easy to do. It takes time because you need to understand the pain points of your user, understand the kind of the state of mind of your user, how like different activity might make them feel. Like for example, I'm trying to make payments with maybe the Paystack application. I'm trying to make payments with Paystack and my card is not going through. At that point in time, how do you think your users will be feeling? Do you think your user will be feeling frustrated and stuff like that? So user journey kind of puts into account like the different feeling or state of mind of your user as they are going through your application. I hope I was able to answer your question, Christine.
Yeah, we would go into the discussion. Jesus.
Wow.
Discussion. Is there everybody to talk? You have a comment. Stephanie, you can go ahead.
Oh, Stephanie has a question.
Yeah, I think, Stephanie, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Hi guys. Hi Bridget. Thank you for the presentation.
Hi Stephanie.
Hi. I think my question, sorry, is a bit all over the place. That's why I type it.
Let's bring it together.
So the first thing here, based on your presentation, I wouldn't say it's a lot of work, but is a process that will take time, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're in a startup where you have to start building immediately, because that's my experience.
Okay.
I've always been in an environment where they hire a team and they want to start seeing results, right? So there's no time for you to actually spend so much on documentation, right? You're also carrying out your product discovery. You're doing user interviews with people, right, to get ideas. You're fleshing out user stories as well. You're working with the designers. Like, how would you then structure your work as a PM? The good thing about it is that I've been with designers where you don't have to influence their design, and most times a user flow is enough for them to work on the designs. And sometimes I don't even make the user flows because I drag everybody into all the process I'm going through, right? During my product discovery calls, my designer is there and they have like experience doing the wireframes and then turning it into high fidelity as well. So, but I wanted to know how you would work in a very fast-paced environment, right? If you were in that position, considering these steps you have to take for your designs.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I think actually I'm in a fast-paced environment because there's like a lot going, and we know as product managers we have processes of what should be done, what should not be done before this. We need to do proper research. We need to document our findings. We need to share with stakeholders. We need to document it again, reiterate, do flows. We have like processes. Of course, we have processes. But let's say we're in a fast-paced environment. Like I think I'm in a fast-paced. I can have so many products I manage at the same point in time. But like what I normally do, I think you've actually answered the question you asked in what you mentioned. User flow to an extent is like kind of like enough. Yeah. Yes, of course, we always need like a documentation at the end of the day, but user flow in a way kind of bring everyone to be in the same point of reasoning, like have the same understanding. So even before you kind of like start breaking it down into like the documentation, your PRODs, having a user flow gets everyone, you can get working or get started, like you mentioned, like your designers can quickly work with your user flows. And there's something you mentioned that sometimes you don't do user flow because you drag your team members into discussions and stuff, so they have understanding of the processes. Yes, I actually do that sometimes because, yes, like I mentioned in the first place, I'll just get on the call with my developer, the way I'm reasoning, just taking through the process. It helps sometimes, but it can be detrimental because it happened to me today. There was something I discussed with my developer. We understood the process during our call, but because I didn't document it, I didn't document the process, I didn't write it out clearly. He was not arguing with me that I did say this, and I remember what I said. So if maybe there was like a proper documentation, even though I don't have like the full PRODs, but just a user flow to say, when I click this, when user clicks this, you should see this. I can quickly go and hold him accountable and say, I remember I told you when user click this, they should see this, not when they click this, you should take them to another page. So having a user flow helps to like solve the problem. So I won't say you should totally avoid it, but I know like I'm giving this advice, but I may not be taking it fully, but you should always try to like document, like if at least barest minimum, have like a user flow that everyone can always make reference to say, okay, this is what we want to achieve, this is what we want to do. Like I mentioned, it's always easier for you to reiterate on your user flow than to reiterate on the wireframe or on a design or rather code. It's easier to quickly, okay, move this box to this next box. So it's easier. So always like have at least barest minimum, have a user flow, Stephanie.
Okay, thanks. Just a follow-up one. What if you have a difficult product designer that doesn't take your suggestions because they feel they're the product designers and you shouldn't tell them how the system should work because they are also carrying out their research?
Wow, story of my life. Wonderful. So, you know, we as product managers, basically, we need to know how to like manage people. Yeah, so sometimes I try to like, I think I've actually been in that same position too, when the designer have this understanding, okay, I know better than you because I'm the designer, you are the product manager, manage, let me design. Yes, sometimes that might be right because it happened to me that sometimes it was right. I was just being maybe fussy, product manager, feel like okay, I know it all. Sometimes just like listen to them, they might be right. And if they are wrong, well, like I said, the users are the star of your flow, not the designer, not you, not the developer. So you need to like help them see that is the user, how the design will, how the users will interact with that design, how the outcome will look like if they interact with that kind of design. You just have to help them see it. I remember you are the one that is actually managing them. Look for a way to like manage them properly. Help them see your reasoning, help them see that this is not about you as a product manager, because sometimes they might think maybe you're just trying to flex muscle for them, that you're a product manager. Help them to see that this decision you're making is not for you as a product manager, but for your users.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very, very much, Bridget. I don't know if we all still have opinions. If there's something you'd like to add, a tool that you use for wireframing that might have not been mentioned or something, you can just contribute at this point. We have just 1 minute before we draw the curtain on this.
We have 8:05. We have 6 more minutes because we started at 7:05. I don't know, like somebody should argue with me, but yeah. want to hear from Derek. Derek has something to say.
Thanks, Princess. Okay, hi everyone. So yeah, I think Princess just dropped I was about dropping Whimsical. Whimsical is a very awesome tool for user flows and wireframes, and it's pretty has a very nice user interface. Yeah, but that's just by the way. So yeah, about the question I asked, I think Stephanie also asked it. Because I mean, as a product manager, right? Personally, from experience, I believe that UX is the core of your job description. Everything you're doing is about your users and trying to improve their experience, right? Building the right product for them. Those who are like churning, how can I get them, but how can I retain them? It's all about the users. Without them, we don't exist, right? And definitely, right, throughout our career, we have to learn how to do the user research. We have to also learn how to pass that information across to the engineers, ensure that the work that's delivering is actually ensuring that it's actually delivering value for those same users. Now, user flows are really advisable, and reason being that I've seen a tremendous increase in less waste of my time when I work with designers, because when I give them a user flow, it sort of like shows them the entire journey, right? And this is for companies where you don't have people who you don't have clearly defined roles. And it's very hard to see in Nigerian companies. I won't lie, in Nigerian companies, it's very hard to see where you have a very effective UX designer and then a very effective UI designer, right? Most people just bring both of them together and then call themselves product designers, right? And even at that, they don't do the UX part well. They focus a lot on the UI itself. Now, as a PM, you want to give work to your designer to work on something, and trying to, let's say you write the stories down, right? Trying to like explain how the flow is meant to be. You can, with time, you can actually easily just do user flow. It's pretty straightforward. But a wire flow feels more complicated. I tried it once, and it felt annoyingly stressful. Like, why would I do a designer's job for them? Right? It's now when you do in quotes design sprints, which is something Google brought up, a 5-day sprint, you can work with your designers to create wireframes, right? But at the end of the day, when you now say as a PM, you want to leave documentation, you want to leave strategy to do wire flows for your team. Like user flows is understandable because now we have user flows, we have wireframes, we have wire flows, which combines wireframes and user flows. So when a designer tells me, well, I'm having a creative block in understanding how to do this particular thing, I always ask them one simple thing, right? You want to design XYZ. XYZ most likely is not the first time it has been done in the world before. Have you gone to go and get inspirations from other places? Because how do we even know what is a good design? If I tell anybody here now who does wireframes to do a wireframe now, right? You already have something mental in your head. How did you get that thing in your head? You didn't just think about it. You most likely would have used an opinion from a design you saw on an app you've used, maybe Jumia Foods, or something you saw on that app you use, and then say, okay, I think I can arrange this particular thing in particular manner, right? Based on what you've seen before sometime. It didn't just come to you just like that, like in a flash, right? So I think what I'm saying is there are a lot of things that we PM do, and I feel like we sort of like pamper. Most times we do it because when we tell the people who should do it to do it, and they're like wasting our time because we are like the ones in charge of the products, we don't want to get delayed. But at the end of the day, is it really our job to create those wireframes? Honest truth, probably not. It's probably our job to work with the team creating it, right? Supervise them, assist them, or not to create it and give it to them. Because that's actually the job of the UX person, if I may say. The PM works with the UX person to do the entire user research and all that, and also works with the designers to actually ensure that the lo-fi designs have actually been translated to the hi-fi and then given to the engineers as well. Well, is it really our work? I really don't think so. So in scenarios where we find out that we can't, you can't deliver everything, you have to like be very fast. User flows are pretty much fine to give to any UI designer, right? But it's still their work to still go ahead and go and research from somewhere and then come back with wireframes. So I'm not even doing wireframes, just go ahead and start doing a design, which normally is a very bad design protocol, but sometimes they wing it well and it works fine for them. But giving them user flows, right? Trust me, it increases productivity like 1,000,000%. I even tried it last week. People had contemplated about XYZ, and I'm like, okay, see, I see user flows here, and everybody understood exactly what the platform was meant to do just by seeing the user flows. User flows can take you probably an hour to do. Depends on how fast you are with your research work, right? But wireframes code, they can be tough. Well, that's just it. Time up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Derek. We have to start, as product managers, we need to start changing the narrative in this country. We can't be doing jobs of product designers, UI designers.
Go and tell startup founders. Thanks.
You have Saturday evening to plan your coup and plan everything you want to do.
We not go agree. Derek will lead us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bridget. Thank you very much, everybody, for making time to come and listen to us. And I hope we'll all implement, start creating out some wireframes and beautiful user flows. We'll be meeting again on Saturday by 8 o'clock. Come and join the team. Just come and talk to us about how your week has gone and how your week has been, rather, and everything. So, if you've not joined the community and you're here, please join the community. And yeah, it's all about making sure we all have a safe space to grow, develop, and get together. Thank you very much for joining, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week, weekend, everything together. And don't fight engineers.
Thank you.
Please join our community on Slack.
Right, guys.
Samuel, please stop recording. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Can you drop the link for the Slack? I think someone is asking.